The political air in Washington, D.C. was thick with tension. The country had never seen such a fierce legal battle unfold between two of its most prominent figures, Pam Bondi, the formidable U.S. General Attorney under President Donald Trump, and Jasmine Crockett, the sharp-witted Democratic Congresswoman from Texas's 30th District. Their ideological clashes had been brewing for months, but no one expected it to culminate in what would soon be remembered as the most brilliant legal trap ever set. The conflict had started over a high-profile investigation concerning government funds allocated for border security. The Trump administration had been accused of misallocating billions of dollars, and Jasmine Crockett had taken it upon herself to expose what she claimed was a massive misuse of taxpayer money. She was relentless, calling for hearings, rallying public opinion, and putting Bondi under constant scrutiny. Pam Bondi, however, was not one to be cornered easily. She had built a reputation as a tenacious prosecutor, someone who could dismantle her opponent's arguments with surgical precision. But even she had to admit that Crockett was no pushover. The Congresswoman had a law background, was highly articulate, and had a growing media presence that made her a formidable adversary. For weeks, Crockett had been making media rounds, pushing a narrative that the Trump administration was hiding crucial financial documents. She even hinted that Bondi herself might be complicit in delaying the release of key evidence. The pressure was mounting and the media frenzy was reaching its peak. Then, one fateful evening, Pam Bondi made her move. The Justice Department had announced a special press conference and the speculation was rampant. Would Bondi finally release the documents? Would she resign under pressure? Or was there something else, something far more calculated, waiting to be revealed? As the cameras rolled, Pam Bondi stepped onto the podium, her expression unreadable. She adjusted the microphone, took a slow breath, and with an air of controlled confidence, she began. "Ladies and gentlemen, the American people deserve the truth," she said. "And today I intend to give it to them." The room fell silent. Every reporter, every political analyst, every legal expert leaned forward in anticipation. Bondi continued, "Over the past several weeks, my office has been accused of withholding financial records. Representative Jasmine Crockett has repeatedly suggested that there is something to hide. However, what she failed to mention is that her own office has been engaging in legally questionable activities regarding these very same documents." Murmurs spread through the crowd. What was she talking about? Congresswoman Crockett, Bondi said, her gaze locked onto the cameras, has unknowingly walked into a legal trap of her own making. Gasps filled the room. The trap had been set, and the next revelation would shake Washington to its core. The air in the press room turned electric. The gathered journalists, analysts, and political operatives sat on the edge of their seats, their eyes darting between Pam Bondi and the camera lenses capturing every word. The U.S. General Attorney had just accused Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of walking into a legal trap, but no one knew exactly what it was. Bondi paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before she continued. "For weeks, Representative Crockett has claimed that the Trump administration is withholding critical financial documents. She has gone so far as to suggest that my office is actively obstructing justice. But what if I told you that she has been handling classified information she was never authorized to possess?" A ripple of shock coursed through the audience. Bondi raised a folder, thick with papers, and placed it on the podium. "This," she said, tapping the folder with a measured confidence, "is a collection of internal communications from Representative Crockett's office. It proves beyond a doubt that her staff illegally obtained financial records that were still under federal audit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a violation of federal law." The room erupted in frantic whispers. This was bigger than anyone had anticipated. "As the nation's general attorney, it is my duty to uphold the law, regardless of who is involved," Bondi continued. "Through extensive review, we have found that Representative Crockett's team acquired these classified budget documents weeks before they were lawfully available. Not only did she use this information to launch her public crusade against the administration, but she also misrepresented the data to fit her own political agenda." Cameras flashed as journalists scrambled to take notes. "Let me be clear," Bondi said, her voice firm, "this is not about partisan politics. This is about legal ethics and responsibility. The Congresswoman, knowingly or unknowingly, received unauthorized financial documents and then used them as the foundation of her accusations against the administration. The irony? She has been accusing us of hiding information when in reality, she and her team have been handling classified records without permission." A reporter from the front row shot up his hand. "Madam Attorney, are you saying Representative Crockett committed a federal crime?" Bondi met his gaze head-on. "I am saying that there is enough evidence to warrant a formal investigation." And as of this morning, my office has requested a federal inquiry into the matter. Congresswoman Crockett will need to explain how her team got their hands on restricted government files and why they failed to disclose this information while demanding transparency from others. The crowd burst into a frenzy. Crockett had thought she was leading the charge against corruption, but Bondi had just flipped the script. The Congresswoman wasn't exposing wrongdoing. She had fallen into a legal trap, one that would now put her under the very scrutiny she had sought to impose on others. Within moments, news outlets were running headlines. Pam Bondi accuses Jasmine Crockett of mishandling classified financial records. Legal battle unfolds. Did Crockett's team illegally obtain government documents? Washington in turmoil as Bondi calls for federal inquiry against top Democrat. Bondi closed her folder and gave a knowing smile. "I believe in accountability," she said. "Now, it's time for Representative Crockett to practice what she preaches." As she stepped away from the podium, one thing was clear. This legal war had only just begun. The moment Pam Bondi exited the press conference, Washington, D.C. was thrown into political chaos. The accusations against Jasmine Crockett sent shockwaves across the nation, igniting a media firestorm that neither side could control. Within hours, Crockett's office released an official response. Standing before a row of American flags, the Congresswoman was flanked by her legal advisors, her usual firebrand energy tempered but unmistakably present. "This is nothing but a desperate attempt by the Trump administration to silence those who seek the truth," she declared. Pam Bondi and her office are using baseless accusations to shift the focus away from the real issue, billions of dollars in taxpayer money that have gone unaccounted for. Crockett's supporters erupted in applause, but the damage had been done. The words federal investigation carried weight, and the legal implications were serious. In the days that followed, leaks began pouring out. Documents surfaced showing that one of Crockett's senior aides had indeed obtained classified budget reports before they were officially declassified. Some sources claimed the aide had received the files from an anonymous whistleblower, while others suggested a more sinister possibility: unauthorized access to restricted government databases. Bondi, however, wasn't done. She had only played her opening move, and now it was time to tighten the trap. The legal chess match begins. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Washington Monument, Bondi called an emergency meeting at the Justice Department. Her legal team gathered in the conference room, files and laptops open, ready to analyze every possible angle. "This isn't just about proving that Crockett's team mishandled classified information," Bondi said, pacing the room. "We need to show intent. If we can establish that they knowingly acquired and misused these documents, then we have grounds for prosecution." Her top investigator, Michael Pearson, leaned forward. "We've been reviewing the digital footprint on the classified financial records. Turns out the metadata on those documents shows they were accessed by a non-authorized IP address before they were leaked to the press." Bondi's eyes sharpened. "Where did the access come from?" "A device linked to a congressional aide in Crockett's office," Pearson replied. "The logs show multiple downloads at odd hours. It wasn't a one-time mistake, this was systematic." Bondi let out a slow breath. This was exactly the kind of evidence she needed. If Crockett's team had been illegally retrieving financial data, it would be impossible for her to claim ignorance. "Here's where it gets interesting," Pearson continued. "We've also found emails that suggest Crockett's team was coordinating with certain media outlets before they even had the documents. It looks like they were planning their narrative ahead of time, which shows they weren't just uncovering a scandal. They were trying to manufacture one." Bondi smiled. "That's exactly what I needed to hear." The public battle heats up. As Bondi prepared her next legal maneuver, Crockett was already scrambling to regain control of the narrative. She made appearances on every major news network, claiming she was the victim of a political witch hunt. "This is an attack on democracy," she told CNN. "The Trump administration and Pam Bondi are using the Justice Department as a weapon to intimidate those who dare to speak out against corruption." But Bondi wasn't playing politics. She was playing the law. 2 days later, Bondi held another press conference, this time with official subpoenas in hand. "After a thorough review of digital records, my office has uncovered evidence that classified financial documents were accessed by unauthorized individuals within Representative Crockett's team. As such, we are issuing subpoenas for electronic communications, hard drives, and internal records from her office." The room exploded. This wasn't just an accusation anymore. This was a full-fledged legal offensive. With the subpoenas issued and an official federal investigation now underway, Crockett found herself in the one place she never expected to be, on the defensive. And Bondi wasn't finished yet. The morning after Pam Bondi issued the subpoenas, Jasmine Crockett's office was in crisis mode. Legal analysts debated the implications on national television and political strategists scrambled to control the fallout. It was no longer just about politics, this was a serious federal case with real legal consequences. Crockett's legal team met behind closed doors to formulate a strategy. She knew that if Bondi could prove intent, if she could establish that Crockett's team had knowingly and deliberately obtained classified information, then she was in deep trouble. We need to discredit this investigation before it gains momentum, her chief legal counsel, Robert Langston, advised. We argue selective prosecution. We paint this as a political attack. Crockett nodded but felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had spent her career fighting against corruption and now the tables had turned. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi wasn't letting up. The unraveling of the cover-up. Inside the Justice Department, Bondi's team was making rapid progress. Digital forensic experts had already uncovered email exchanges that suggested a deliberate effort within Crockett's office to manipulate the financial data before releasing it to the public. One particularly damning email caught Bondi's attention. From Chief of Staff, Representative Crockett's office. To Senior Advisor. Subject, the documents. Make sure this leak looks organic. We don't want to trace back to us. If anyone asks, say it came from a concerned insider. Bondi smirked as she read it. This wasn't just reckless, this was intentional. But the real bombshell came when investigators traced back the source of the leaked documents. The unauthorized IP address? It was linked to a laptop issued to one of Crockett's most trusted aides. The problem? That same aide had just deleted thousands of emails and files from their device, a clear sign of obstruction. Bondi immediately moved to file obstruction of justice charges. By noon, the headlines were blaring. Red circle breaking, Pam Bondi files obstruction of justice charges against key Jasmine Crockett aide. Red circle investigation expands. Did Crockett's office attempt to destroy evidence? The walls were closing in. Crockett responded with a fiery speech in front of the Capitol, surrounded by her supporters. This is an abuse of power, she shouted. I will not be intimidated. But even as she spoke, her legal team was panicking behind the scenes. The masterstroke. Bondi had one last move up her sleeve. That evening, she filed a motion to compel Crockett herself to turn over all personal communications related to the case. This was a legal masterstroke. If Crockett refused, she could face contempt charges. If she complied, she risked exposing even more damaging information. Crockett's team had no good options. She was now officially under investigation and Bondi had played her into a corner where every move only made things worse. As the night fell over Washington, Bondi watched the news coverage from her office, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. The legal trap had snapped shut and now there was no escape. But was this just the beginning of an even bigger scandal? The walls were closing in on Jasmine Crockett. With subpoenas served, obstruction charges filed against one of her senior aides, and now a motion demanding her personal communications, she was running out of options. The once defiant Congresswoman now faced a harsh reality. Pam Bondi had outmaneuvered her at every turn. Inside Crockett's office, her legal team was divided. We need to fight this, one of her attorneys insisted. Refuse to comply, take this to the Supreme Court if necessary. But Robert Langston, her chief counsel, shook his head. If we fight the motion to compel, we look guilty. If we comply, Bondi finds more evidence. Either way, we lose. Crockett's phone buzzed. It was a message from an anonymous source. Bondi knows more than you think. Cut a deal while you still can. Her hands trembled as she locked her screen. Had someone inside leaked even more damaging information? Bondi's checkmate. At the Justice Department, Bondi knew she had won. Her team had gathered enough evidence to prove that Crockett's staff had not only accessed classified financial records illegally, but had also tried to manipulate them before leaking to the media. The obstruction charges against her aide were just the beginning. Then the breakthrough came. Investigators uncovered deleted files that had been partially recovered from the aide's laptop. Among them was a draft email from Crockett herself, instructing her staff to find a way to tie these financial discrepancies directly to Trump's allies. It was game over. The press conference that ended it all. The next morning, Pam Bondi stood at the podium once again, the nation watching. The American people deserve honesty, she began. And unfortunately, Representative Jasmine Crockett's office has engaged in actions that undermine both the integrity of our government and the rule of law. She took a deep breath. We have uncovered substantial evidence that her office knowingly accessed and manipulated classified financial records, obstructed justice by destroying key files, and attempted to fabricate a scandal for political gain. As such, we are formally recommending an ethics investigation and possible legal action. Gasps filled the room.